Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Thursday edition of Whiskey Uncorked, where we are doing another Last Drops review. If you're new to the channel, Last Drops reviews are where I take a bottle that I am down to the last pour it, give you some tasty notes, give you my general experience with the bottle from start to finish, give it a score, and get you on your way. Now, today we are going to be talking about a bottle in the Kilkerran 12-year-old that I could definitely make a Monday video. I have a lot that I could talk about in regards to specifically the Kilkerran 12-year-old, as well as Glengyle, the distillery that makes Kilkerran as a whole. But I thought it was better that with the 12-year-old, if I just did the review and got you some tasting notes and generally speaking what I think of it, and save some of that other conversations for maybe another expression. All right, so let's jump into it. Let's get some information on the bottle. As you can see, this is an older bottling. They have since switched to the squatter bottles similar to the Springbank bottles. And this particular edition was bottled on 02/03/2020. So likely March 2nd, 2020. And this bottle's been open for quite a while. I've taken my time with this one. If you didn't know, Kilkerran is made by the Glengyle distillery, as I mentioned. Glengyle is owned by J&A Mitchell, who also own the Springbank distillery. Now, the same people that make whiskey at Springbank actually make whiskey at Glengyle as well, as they make whiskey at Springbank for 9 months out of the year. And then for the other 3 months, they go over and make whiskey at Kilkerran. All right, so let's get this last dram poured and we'll get you some tasting notes. But yeah, this is a bottle that I've had an interesting relationship with, and I think the 12-year-old Kilkerran is an expression that I've just had an interesting relationship with as a whole, because I haven't really always known what to think about this. To keep a long story short, you can actually go back, I think, to part 4 of the dramface.com top 40 reaction video. You can find the section in which Kevin and I are discussing Kilkerran. You can get a little bit more information about what I think. But generally speaking, I've always kind of struggled with, especially the 12-year-old, being almost Springbank-like and just wishing that it was just Springbank, particularly the 10-year-old. Now, that's really unfair. However, Kilkerran is the one distillery that I think is an accurate alternative to Springbank, right? You will often hear people recommend like Benromic, Ardnamurchan, maybe even like Edradour and their Balakin line, that sort of thing, as alternatives to the very difficult to find Springbank bottlings. However, I really feel that Kilkerran is the only one that is truly a Springbank alternative. And generally speaking, it tends to be Springbank light. It's not as pungent, as funky, but it is still those things. And oftentimes, as I was saying, sometimes when I'm drinking Kilkerran, particularly the 12-year-old, because the 16 did win my whiskey of the year last year, but particularly the 12, I'm just kind of wondering why I didn't pour a Springbank 10. Now, that's really unfair to the whiskey, and I've done my best, especially over the last half to a third of this bottle, of trying to look at this in its own light, give it its own space, and try to judge it for what it is and not what it isn't. But enough of that, let's talk about the nose. So it's pretty recognizable as a Campbelltown whiskey right off the bat, and it would definitely lead you to believe that it's not a Glen Scotia, right? This is a Springbank or it's a Kilkerran. They are relatively similar in their funk styles, although I'm pretty sure that Kilkerran's peat is actually, or their peated barley is brought in from one of the other maltings in Scotland. I have found this nose to be a bit of a chameleon nose, right? Different times, different nights, I get I won't say very different notes, but it can actually vary from being kind of a doughy, yeasty sort of nose. I can pick up more of a sweaty funkiness. I get light baking chocolates, I get lemon, I get malt, vanilla. I can occasionally even get puffs of smoke, right? These are all things that, depending on the night, I can pick out of this dram. But today, this is kind of where I think it's settled most of the time for me, and that is a very farmy type of funk, which does, to a certain degree, at least in my mind, separate it from Springbank, who, if you watch my most recent video, the Springbank 18 review, where I talked a little bit about the 3 types of funk I get on Springbanks. Generally speaking, that's like a mushroom funk, a cheese, or a sweaty funk, like a gym bag. This is a little bit more farm-like, right? We're kind of talking fairly freshly manured fields, dairy farm sort of a smell to it. Not super pungent, not real sickly, but it definitely has that sort of vibe to it, where I don't always pick that up on Springbanks. All right, what else are we getting? Yeah, this is a little bit more acidic and yeasty and lemon today. I am getting a touch of baking chocolates, like melted baking chocolate that's melting on the stove. But that's pretty light, and usually when I get that, it's like quick little bursts. But I've really grown to like the nose. I think I've gotten to know it. I've gotten to dig around in it quite a bit. But it is still a little bit of an inconsistent experience for me, which isn't necessarily a negative. So overall, I like the nose. Maybe stopping just short of loving it, but I am a sucker for that farmy sort of scent. So I grew up in Wisconsin and spent most of my life driving past dairy farms or freshly manured fields, so it's a very nostalgic smell for me. All right, let's check it out on the palate. Cheers. No, I didn't mention this earlier, but the cask makeup on the Kilkerran 12 seems to be pretty consistently 70% bourbon and 30% sherry. And it definitely feels like, at least in this version, that sherry is likely refilled, because the bourbon, the experience is very consistent with the next bourbon cask. So a lot of your typical bourbon cask notes are in here, the malt, the vanilla, all that sort of stuff. Nothing too surprising there. But there are definitely some interesting things going on. I definitely feel like the peaty portion is much more peppery. It definitely has a little bit more bite than I'm typically used to when drinking like a Springbank or a Longrow, which tends to be a pretty smoothed out peat experience, but again, earthy and cheesy and sweaty. Like it doesn't have a lot of that pepperiness that you can sometimes get on, say, Islay whiskeys. All right, sip number 2. Here we go. There's a lot of sweet things going on in here. A lot of sweet vanilla, sweet malt, but I wouldn't say that the overall experience is sweet. The peat is pretty punchy, as I mentioned. It's definitely not shy, not overwhelming. Into the finish, you start to get some drier notes. Those hay notes start to come out. There's almost a bit more to the cheesiness quality kind of on the finish as the palate starts to die down. You're starting to get some aged cheese, like I guess almost like a Parmesan Reggiano sort of note, which is really interesting, combined with the oaky qualities that you are getting even at 12 years old. Similar to the nose, I've gotten some interesting things at different times, and I'm getting one of those I'm kind of getting right now. I don't always get it like this clearly, but it was a kind of recent discovery for me, and that is on the finish. There is like an Oreo cookie quality, not the cream, just the chocolate disc. Like that kind of chocolatiness, where it's almost an artificial thing. But you know, I've had a million Oreo cookies over the course of my life, and it's a very familiar like texture and flavor. So it's enjoyable, and it was fun to kind of find that. It's if you've been following my reviews, it's really fun when you find one of these nostalgic notes that kind of bring you back to another time and place. So there is one negative on the palate that's kind of held me back in terms of absolutely loving at least this edition of the Kilkerran 12, and I've had a difficult time describing it, but the closest I've gotten is there's like a flat soda quality to it. So it's almost like the back half of the palate is a fully fizzy carbonated soda, where in the front there is this kind of thin, thickly sweet, like just that flat quality to it. There's this kind of like diet soda sweetness thing, saccharin or whatever, that it's not loud, but it's there, and once you notice it, I can't ignore it. And sometimes it's stronger than others, but it has been a pretty consistent thing throughout this bottle. But yeah, there is a note in here that I don't particularly like, and it's always been there, and I'm still getting it today. So I have grown to like this a little bit more. Trying to flush my mind of the whole Springbank comparison thing has helped me enjoy this much more than I was maybe the first half of the bottle or so, which is probably why it took me so long to get through this bottle. I'm sure I've had this open for at least 2 years, maybe up to 3, somewhere in there. But I have learned to like this quite a bit more, but there are a thing here and there that I'm not a huge fan of. So in terms of giving this one a score, I do think there's enough. It's obviously very high quality whiskey. It is different than probably pretty much any other introductory bottle to a brand in that 10 to 12-year-old age range outside of Springbank. So you certainly have to give this bottle its props, but I still don't fully love this. But it's very good, so I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10, which is above average. So I would definitely recommend this if you're looking to explore some more interesting, more complex flavors if you can find it, because Kilkerran 12 isn't as difficult to find as Springbank is, but it's definitely not something you can pick up at the supermarket. Around here, this is going to cost $90 to $100 plus tax. It's obviously much more affordable than that if you can get it in the UK or Europe at like an actual RRP. Generally speaking, if you're trying to find a Springbank and you can't, and you can find one of these, you're going to get a pretty representative experience of what people are talking about when they say Campbeltown and Campbeltown Funk. But as I mentioned in my Springbank 18 video, you're going to know, you either already know, or it won't be hard for you to make the decision as to whether you're willing to pay a premium for Springbanks, Longrows, Hazelburns, and Kilkerrans. There are some hard realities that we have to face, particularly here in the US where we don't have a choice. But again, I don't want to harp on that too much. I've talked about it a lot. If you're only willing to pay RRP, you might have to be really patient to find a bottle. If you're in the US, again, you're not going to be able to get one for RRP unless you're going to fly to Scotland, and then you're not paying RRP anymore, obviously. But it is what it is. We're all going to have to make choices about bottles like these. I'm looking forward to continuing to explore Glengyle and their Kilkerran whiskey. I've enjoyed the vast, vast, vast majority of the Kilkerrans that I have tried, and I'm looking forward to trying more. So until next time, thank you again for watching. Please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Cheers.